Hello there, everyone. This is Marissa and Julia Bag, Moms with a Mic. I want to welcome you to our discussion today.
Yeah, so glad to have you with us as always. And today we're talking about a very serious topic that certainly is personal to South Florida and to communities across the nation, and that's gun violence in schools.
Yeah, we really want to open up a discussion, talk about where things stand right now by looking at some statistics, see how things are changing, also see what strides have been made, what improvements have been made in the last years, and also where we want to take this, where else many in our community and across the country, what else needs to be done to ensure that our students, teachers, staff, everyone is safe while you're learning at school.
Exactly. And so we have some very special guests that we are happy to introduce to you who have joined us this afternoon.
First, we want to start off with Mr. Tony Montalto. He is the president of Stand With Parkland. That's a group that has really done a lot in recent years here in South Florida. They advocate for practical public safety reforms. They really focus on safety in the classroom for students and teachers and everyone involved at school. Also improved mental health support. The list just goes on and on. Responsible firearms ownership. Mr. Montalto, thank you so much for being with us today. We know this is especially important to you because you lost your daughter Gina back in February of 2018 in the Marjory Stoneman Douglas shooting. So thank you for your time today.
Well, thanks for having me. Of course, it's very sad that I'm involved in this because we do miss our beautiful daughter Gina so very much. And I would be remiss if also to say that sadly today is the 9th commemoration of the Sandy Hook tragedy. Today we'll be thinking especially about those families who lost someone. Stand With Parkland was created by the families who lost someone in the tragic Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School massacre. As you said, we look at school safety in a little bit more of a unique and holistic way. We look at first, securing the campus. Next, better mental health screening and support programs. And finally, if you choose to own one, responsible firearms ownership, which includes things like safe storage and background checks. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you, Tony. And we also have another special guest who is joining us for this conversation today.
Yeah, his name is Michael Dangelo. Thanks for being with us. He's a security expert. He has a long history of safety just experience in our community. He's also been a captain with the South Miami Police Department. So thank you so much for your time today as well. Michael, thanks for being here today. We know that this topic is important for you as well.
Thank you both for having me. It's an absolute honor to be here today, especially with the likes of Tony, who I know is someone where this topic hits home to. And my work, my efforts are sort of just to support those that are really directly impacted by these tragedies.
And we know you're also a board certified security consultant, so you can kind of give us some insight into that world as well as we have this discussion today.
Yeah, I think we'd all like to hear that school safety and security has progressed by leaps and bounds. As Tony mentioned, we're 9 years out from Sandy Hook, only a few years out from Parkland. And I wish I could say that that's true in all aspects of it. There has been some tremendous progress, but there's still a lot of work to do.
Certainly. So let's get started. Let's talk about, kind of just what we have seen, what some of the changes are.
So first, let's say, what do you think is the number one problem that schools are facing right now when it comes to trying to ensure safety for staff and students?
Well, I think it's a real readjustment following COVID and getting back into normal learning and normal procedures. Another struggle is maintaining a safe and secure culture in the school to make sure that students and staff members feel safe. And then finally, we need everyone, teachers, administrators, other students, other staff members, to look out for any children that are exhibiting concerning behaviors or showing that they might need a little bit more extra help. I think that's those are where the real focus needs to be, is prevention and getting a hold of people and getting them the help they need before they resort to violence.
And you mentioned, in fact, some legislation filed today that speaks to mental services. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as you know, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Commission has been involved in investigating the tragedy that took my daughter Gina and 16 other wonderful souls back on Valentine's Day of 2018. And some of their recommendations have also broken out into improving mental health in the state. So just today, Representative Christine Unchovsky, who was the former mayor of Parkland and now represents District 96, her and Senator Gail Harrell have introduced HB 899, which is entitled Mental Health of Students. And part of that bill comes from the recommendations of the Stoneman Douglas Commission. It will ensure that if a student is receiving services in school, that we look at all the other wraparound services that are available for a family to make sure that we're addressing the problem of the student from as many angles as possible and making maximum use of the services that we have out there and available right now.
And Michael, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
I think the challenge we're seeing in school safety and security today is what I call the balancing act. Those that are tasked with school safety and security are dealing with the gamut of things from one end of the spectrum to the other. Issues like bullying, aggressive behaviors, students being irate with teachers. And then that expands all the way to the extreme end of it when we start talking about active shooter incidents and securing the campus. So it's the balancing act of keeping these things in the forefront of everyone's mind, not just being energized about them right after an incident. And I'm sure Tony's seen this happen time and time again. As soon as there's an incident, budgets are suddenly replenished, and everything that the security staff or police departments in the schools have asked for is suddenly getting approved. We're seeing the latest and greatest in technology being thrown at the school. But as time continues on and we get further and further away from that critical incident, memories seem to be really short and it falls by the wayside. I think the key struggle right now is keeping that at the forefront of everyone's mind and making that continued progress with, we don't need to wait for another horrific incident to be reminded of what we need to do. We need to stay on top of it and continue to do it. The mental health component that Tony just spoke to is a key component that's been lacking for so many years. It's got to be a piece that fits into the equation that's well communicated from all ends of the spectrum. If the experts in the mental health capacity notice the red flags, then that has to be followed up with immediate action so that the team of those responsible for the security and those responsible for mental health issues with the students are all communicating, working together, and making sure that this stays a continuous process.
Well, and just to share a statistic that we were able to gather recently, it says there have been over 70 incidents of gunfire on K through 12 campuses since the beginning of August. This is nationwide, according to the data from Everytown for Gun Safety. This compares to less than 30 incidents during that same time period back in 2019. And it is the highest number since they began tracking this statistic in 2013. So that really kind of brings to the forefront of putting it into numbers like that. I mean, you know, you think about hearing about these incidents happening, but when you really realize how many we've had in a short period of time, it's striking. And so it makes you think we need to do something, you know, not just from the last incident that happened. This is happening everywhere and more frequently. I mean, what goes through your mind, Tony, when you hear a statistic like that?
Well, sadly, the discussion over guns in school tends to bring apart this division right away, right? You say guns and people on the right run to their corner, the people on the left run to their corner, and nothing gets accomplished. So I think that's why Stand With Parkland is so unique. We're uniquely inclusive. We're nonpartisan. We believe that safety is an issue that all students should be entitled to. And with that, we look for pragmatic solutions. things that we promote, such as universal background checks, such as safe storage of firearms. Sadly, we saw the rise in sales of firearms during COVID, and many families may not know how to safely secure one. Someplace where it's not likely to be accessed by children, where it's not likely to be stolen. This is vital. Another vital piece that we would love to see nationally, which we've enacted here in Florida, is the red flag or extreme risk protection order laws that allow someone who's exhibiting concerning behavior to have their weapons removed so that they have the opportunity to get help. I think these are great tools that affect firearms that are on the street today or firearms that will be on the street tomorrow. We start looking at the people instead of making it about the hardware.
Gotcha. We have seen certainly some changes since February of 2018. What are maybe some of the safety improvements that in your minds have been most significant? For me, what comes to mind is Alyssa's Law, with having panic buttons in rooms and electronic communication in case of emergency directly with law enforcement. What have been maybe some of the biggest positives so far coming out of Parkland?
Michael, we can start with you if you want to take
Sure.
this one.
I think, as you mentioned, Alyssa's Law, things that speak to the communication issues are huge, and we've seen significant improvement there. And I wouldn't even say since the tragedy of February 14th at Parkland, I would say we've seen changes going all the way back from Columbine Senior High, although they've been slow and not moving at the pace we need them to, and we continue to have these incidents. There has been some change. And a perfect example of that communication piece, in the Michigan event that we just all went through, horrific event in Michigan, we know that staff members did things right. Those flags were caught. Things were brought to people's attention. But there seems to be a gap in the communication of those that deal with the mental health or those in the one-to-one instruction, the teachers that worked every day with the students, and then those tasked with the security, whether it be law enforcement or internal security. And regardless of whether one's employed by the county, one's employed by the school district, and one may be a professional from an outside employer that's contracted in, there has to be a seamless communication between all those parties. And I'd like to think that we're seeing some improvement there. The notification system, how if there is some kind of critical event taking place in the campus, there's a method of both immediately notifying first responders and law enforcement who are going to have to directly address the issue, but also getting that notification out campus-wide to all instructional staff, all non-instructional staff that are on the campus, letting them know what's taking place, and putting in act those procedures that we hope they're all drilling and exercising regularly. And I'll say that with the caveat of drilling and exercising in a careful, effective, but not yet overly stressful method.
Understood. Tony, anything you'd like to weigh in on here, perhaps on what you think has been most significant since 2018, what's done to prevent gun violence?
Well, sadly, it's all too late for my family and the 16 others. However, we are happy at some of the changes that have been made and some of the progress that really Stand With Parkland has helped drive. And we'll start with back in March of 2018 with the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act, which provided more money to schools to harden the campus, more money for mental health increases in our schools here in the state, and finally, the most significant changes to firearm laws that we've seen in Florida in 20 years. Again, it was passed with bipartisan support through a Republican-controlled governorship and legislature. Again, pointing out that school safety is not partisan. It's just something we need to do. There was a subsequent school safety bill in 2019 that came about with recommendations from the Stoneman Douglas Commission. Finally, in 2020, we saw Alyssa's Law and the alerting systems. And then just last year, we saw SB 590, school safety. And a significant part of that law that Stand With Parkland was the driving force behind was the requirement now to have schools notify parents of threats to school transportation, or school-sponsored events. Sadly, this was not the case prior to the Parkland shooting. And parents like myself, we didn't know the threat that our kids were under. So now there's a requirement in Florida law to make that happen. We saw that just last week as there was a threat at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, and the principal put out a message to the parents. So we're seeing that vital change right here in our community. Notification about threats so that you can make a good choice as to what to do to protect your students and your children. Another great piece that Stand With Parkland helped create federally is schoolsafety.gov. And that's the clearinghouse of best practices for school safety. Again, access through schoolsafety.gov. That brought together the power of the federal government with the Department of Education, the Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Justice, all contributing to this thing. It has programs that will help you address the climate and culture in school. It has things that will help you prevent COVID. It has things that will help you with your active shooter plan. If something fails, it also links to federal documents to help you fix that, and then also has links to federal grant programs to provide money to help fix those things. It's such an invaluable tool. Again, that's schoolsafety.gov.
So many pieces really to consider when you're just talking about just to protect our campuses and everyone on them. I think, Tony, just what is striking to me, and you mentioned it, how threats are dealt with against campuses. Certainly one of the lessons learned since Parkland, and we have seen that recently. NBC6 has covered what's been happening with various school threats, and so we certainly see these being taken seriously by school administration, school principals, and dealt with right away. What kind of impact do you think that maybe has? And of course, it was certainly unsettling to see that happen again at MSD.
But it also happened, I mean, a couple weeks ago after the incident in Michigan, you had several schools in the Boca Raton area that were under a general threat. I talked to some moms after that, and one had a kid in high school, another in middle school, and she chose to keep her kids in school. But she told me that her daughter, who I believe is in seventh grade, was talking about the timing of it, that she had heard it was going to happen at a certain time, and she was hoping she was going to be in a certain classroom because there's no windows there. I mean, it's just incredible to think about what students are dealing with as all of this is happening. I just thought that was interesting, but I wanted to share some other numbers with you. I know there were several school threats even in Miami-Dade County schools last week. The police chief of Miami-Dade County Public Schools was talking about it on the radio, and he said they had 20 different threats, but none since it just in the last few weeks, and that none of them were credible. So that's kind of the problem, right? Some of them come in through social media, some of them are phoned in, and Michael, maybe this is something that you can talk about, just how police try to tackle that and
what's credible and what's not.
Exactly. If you don't mind kind of, telling us about that a little bit, how you handle those threats.
Sure. It's always a challenge, but I think the overwhelming effective piece here is that between the law enforcement administrators and the state attorney's office is that we've taken this zero tolerance stance. And this is one of those circumstances where I think everyone agrees zero tolerance is what's called for. Maybe there's nothing behind the threat. There's nothing to show that this person can actively carry it out or had any intention to carrying it out. But the message needs to be sent that we're in a day and age where these types of threats are not designed for getting social media attention. They're taken very seriously. Law enforcement's going to investigate and follow them up now. There is no need of, I feel bad if I call or waste somebody's time. If you see these threats, especially if you pick it up on social media, call law enforcement right away, report it to the school right away. It will be acted upon. The data shows us time and time again in every single active shooter event recorded history, there's been some leakage of that intent. In modern day with the school shootings, of course, the main path is social media. But every single one of them, there's been leaked intent either on social media platforms, talking to coworkers, talking to fellow students. Word gets out that someone who's planning a credible threat has been talking about it, has been posting about it, and that information is taken seriously. Law enforcement follows up on it, school administration follows up on it, and we need to continue that zero tolerance effect of it will be taken seriously. And if it's not a credible threat, there's still going to be a punishment for, one, raising the flag and putting everyone through that alarm, but the resources of law enforcement and the school district that are tied up looking into the threat as well.
And Tony, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, first of all, I think it's fantastic that law enforcement is taking these threats credibly and in doing timely investigations, because that is really the key here. Stand With Parkland worked with the U.S. Secret Service and the National Threat Assessment Center as they introduced both their 2019 report on protecting America's schools and their 2021 report earlier this year on averted targeted school attacks. And as Michael was just saying, it's that leakage, those warning signs that students hear. Those were vital in preventing these attacks. More information on this can be found at standwithparkland.org on our resources page. We have both of those reports. So students were the primary people who saw things. Next was the parents, and also not to be left out, as Michael alluded to earlier, the school resource officers. They were involved in preventing over 66% of these attacks. And that was the 2021 study from the Secret Service. Of course, the most proactive tool that we have to prevent these tragedies is what Michael actually alluded to earlier. It's the behavioral threat assessment team, which brings together the school administrators, mental health professionals, and law enforcement officers, because each of these groups brings a specific eye to these concerns. And that multidisciplinary team is vital to fixing this. That was definitely shown in the 2019 report on protecting America's schools. So we encourage everybody to take a peek at that, become familiar with the behavioral threat assessment team and how it breaks down the silos that Michael was describing earlier.
Certainly, so many levels and layers here to this security challenge. And another question for you, Michael, just wondering, are there any misconceptions perhaps about how police are trying to improve safety? Any misconceptions for the public that you might want to clear up?
I think it's important to understand, and I'm following right after Tony again, the role of the school resource officer, having the law enforcement officer in the campus, cannot be understated. And to put it mildly, in the aftermath of Parkland, the effectiveness and the credibility of school resource officers clearly took a hit. And we can argue for hours about how ineffective the particular school resource officer truly was in Parkland. But we're talking about a professional law enforcement officer who not only has an interest in working in that environment and that climate with children and educators, but is shown to excel in that area. Long gone are the days where the school resource officer was the cop who'd been on the job for 25 years and wanted a nice 7 to 3 Monday through Friday gig to ride out until his retirement. Now we're seeing the cream of the crop, the professional law enforcement officers who show that they have that level of compassion, the ability to communicate and engage with children. They're not only the first line of defense physically in the school as being the armed professional who's on site, God forbid something happened, but they follow a three-pronged approach now. They take the role of informal counselor, informal teacher, and lastly, but certainly not least, as the law enforcement officer. So the engagement, the effectiveness, and the importance of having school resource officers in the school, again, those are combined efforts of the school district and the local law enforcement agency that may serve it. Here in Miami-Dade County, we're very fortunate to have a robust and effective school-based police department. But that can't be understated. And I know that the public's perception about the school resource officer program may have changed in recent past, but that's the most effective tool we have right now. They're the heart of everything of protecting our children in school. And again, they're that key piece that connects all the dots of all the other professionals that are working to make schools safer.
A dynamic job.
And I'm fairly sure that starting in, at least in Broward County at the beginning of the 2019 school year, that was one of the requirements, that there be a school resource officer or a guardian, I believe was the other option at every campus. And then at the same time, that's when they were doing a lot of the construction to have it done, to have single point of entry at every campus, and
Another
added
major change.
fencing and all of these, different improvements to the school to make sure that there was better, eyes on who was coming and going, and obviously making sure, as you were saying, Michael, that there was this incredible resource to have an officer at every campus. Tony, does that sound right to you, that that was the timing of that requirement?
Yeah, that was passed in the 2018 Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act, a requirement for either a school resource officer or a guardian to be on campus, some armed individual. Um, Surprisingly to most people, the statistics about juvenile arrests have shown a 79% decline in the last 25 years. At the same time, you've seen the number of school resource officer programs increasing. So it truly, that early intervention, that counseling that Michael talked about, is vital. And another piece is that, school resource officers should not be part of the school's discipline program. They're not there for discipline. They're there to provide protection if the worst happens. We certainly wish that we had seen a better performance from the officer at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. But we do believe, as a group, Stand With Parkland, that school resource officers are invaluable. As a matter of fact, we've got a section, again, on our standwithparkland.org, on our resources page, about school resource officers, because it's important that every community makes the choice for itself. Here in Florida, it happens to be a state law, but nationwide, communities should make their choice about whether or not they have school resource officers, but they should make that choice by looking at some facts and not just anecdotal evidence of the worst things that happen. Mm-hmm. I'm an airline pilot, and we know that every day hundreds of thousands of flights go off without any incident, and we don't hear about them. But the one that has a problem, we do hear about. And interactions between kids and school resource officers is kind of the same thing. Every day there's hundreds of thousands of kids who walk by their officers, say, hi, how's it going? They build that relationship, they have that credibility. And that's very, very important. And it's important to know that it doesn't mean we don't need more training and better continuing education for the school resource officers, but we don't want our communities to look at them as adversaries. They're not there to perform their arrest function. They're there to do all the other things that Michael had talked about.
Tony, just to underscore what you're saying, on a personal note, I happened to attend a memorial for Broward Sheriff's Deputy Shannon Bennett, who was a resource officer in Broward County. And there were multiple people who spoke of him and his relationship with students, how he was like a father to them. And that was really striking to me, that here you have the figure who, as both of you have described, as a school resource officer who is defender, protector, and also has a relationship with the school staff and with the students themselves. So this officer is not seen, and as you said, Tony, not seen as an adversary, but a partner, really. And just, I think we have a deeper understanding now of how vital that role is.
No, absolutely.
And so I think one of the big questions for me that I'd love to hear both of you answer is, are we any safer today than we were on February 14th, 2018? Michael, do you want to maybe start with that?
I would say, and I certainly would understand if Tony might disagree with me a little bit, but I would say we're much safer than we were on 2018. Mm-hmm. Again, here, particularly in Florida, because it was right here in our own backyard, between the legislative measures that Stand With Parkland and other organizations have seen come to fruition, the individual districts that have made the rules about having an officer in each school, or in Broward County, it was either guardian or officer. Miami-Dade County has put a Miami-Dade police officer in every high school and middle school in Miami-Dade County now, and that's still expanding. We're seeing those initiatives continue. And to me, it's hard to say that across the board we're safer, because we don't know when the next credible threat's coming in, where it's coming in. But between that and the basic measures, the hardening of the schools, the reducing entrances to one entrance, the most basic security features that we've always recommended for any type of organization, we're now seeing come into schools. And traditionally, schools did not want to give the appearance of being this prison-like environment. It was a warm, hospitable, educational environment. So all these security features and hardwares and cameras and door locks and intercom systems just didn't seem to set the right tone and atmosphere for an educational setting. But I think since 2018, we've kind of surpassed that to a greater understanding that there is a way to find a balance between a warm, comfortable atmosphere for education and learning, and doing so in a way that safety is built into that environment as well.
Right, and I couldn't agree more. We do have to find a way to make our schools more secure without making them prisons. Right? Nobody wants to do that. We don't want to make them look like army outposts. But we do have to find some basic principles. One of the design principles is called SEPTED that's out there that provides increased visibility while restricting access to the campus, just as we do to our government buildings and our airports. But I think thanks to the Florida legislature, certainly here in the state, we are in much better shape with the progression of these school safety bills. As a matter of fact, this year we'll be continuing to try and get some of the recommendations of the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Commission through. We met earlier this year with Sheriff Galtieri, who chairs that commission, along with Chairman Latvala from the Florida House and Chairman Gruters from the Florida Senate Education Committees. And we helped to craft a bill that will hopefully progress through the Senate and the House and be enacted into law here in the state of Florida. We talked about the mental health component of HB 899. Federally, we know more needs to be done. We need to have some kind of federal red flag law, just like we passed here in Florida as part of the Stoneman Douglas Act. We need to either have it incentivize states to pass those laws, or we need to have it federally so that it can be acted upon to, again, get people help they need before they resort to violence. We know that we need more mental health counselors in schools. We have the Mental Health in Schools Excellence Act that we support. That's by in the House from Representative Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania and Gottlieb from New Jersey. We have the Eagles Act, which was introduced with bipartisan support by Ted Deutsch and Mario Diaz-Balart down here. That is named after the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School mascot, that would support increased funding for the National Threat Assessment Center and allow them to do more research and training to prevent attacks on our nation's schools. And finally, there's the LASA bill, the Luke and Alex School Safety Act, named after Luke Hoyer and Alex Schachter, who lost their lives. This would help codify and put into law the existence of the Federal Clearinghouse of Best Practices, accessed again through schoolsafety.gov. So we've seen a lot of stuff put in. There's a lot of stuff still to do. We're grateful to the elected leaders who, on both sides of the aisle, have found a way to come together. And if we're really going to solve this problem, that's what we have to do. We have to be looking for solutions. We have to be putting aside what makes us, feel separated from this, and look at what unites us on this issue to keep our students and teachers safe in school. That's one thing that Stand With Parkland, the National Association of Families for Safe Schools, truly supports, is people coming together to find pragmatic solutions, to bring to our lawmakers and change laws or policies to help keep our students and teachers safe at school.
Thank you, Tony, for that look ahead of what we can expect and the efforts that are moving forward. Michael, is there anything that you want to add to that you'd like to see changed moving forward?
Just a reminder to keep notifying administrators, keep notifying law enforcement. We can't stress enough that these instances are always leaked. There's always some kind of clue that something's about to occur. I know the old adage from Department of Homeland Security, see something, say something. It can never hold truer than in the school setting. Parents, if your children come to you and say they saw something unusual posted about their school on social media, follow up on it. Make the call to the school, make the call to law enforcement. I can't stress enough how the public and parents and students themselves are just such a key element to their own safety in the school environment. And that's where it comes from. if you see something that just doesn't sit right, notify somebody. Something will get done.
Well, gentlemen, we want to thank you both for your time on this very important issue. We're glad for the discussion, and we thank you for clarifying, just kind of how far we've come, what has changed, and what we're looking forward moving ahead. And it's been very valuable. So we thank both of you.
And coming from two moms who are going to have little ones in school in the next year or two, it means a lot. And we want to stay educated on what's happening and what we need to do to help make sure that our viewers are aware of the efforts moving forward. So we're both in awe of the work that you've done, Tony, with Stand With Parkland, and just your passion over the years on behalf of your daughter and your family. It's very impressive, and we appreciate you for that.
Well, thank you. We're, it's not just me. It is a lot of the other families as well, working hard to honor their children and their lost loved ones. I just want to piggyback on what Michael said is if you don't have the Fortify Florida app, which is how you can report, or in Broward County, they use the Safer Watch app. This is a great place to leverage technology to allow parents and students to report the things that they see. And as we've seen with these prevented attacks, we've had great success with that. So please, again, look at Safer Watch and the Fortify Florida app for a way to report things that you see.
We'll be downloading that later today. And Michael, thank you as well for your time. You're our law enforcement expert, board certified security consultant. We know that you wear many hats, so we appreciate you giving us some time today with your expertise.
Thank you for having me, and it was an honor to be here with Tony.
Thanks. And gentlemen, we look forward to continuing this conversation and continuing to follow these efforts to make schools safer and our kids safer.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.